Well, we're finally finding a break in the weather for one day, so we're going to get out and start tuning timing and knock control on our Megasquirt with the Typhoon. Stick around. What is going on, everybody? It's been a crazy couple of weeks. It's been a while since the last video because every time it seems like I'm getting ready to record a video, it starts snowing or something else happens. It literally snowed yesterday. It's supposed to snow up to 8 inches this weekend. I am sick and tired of this snow, but that's neither here nor there. Today, we're going to talk about timing tuning on the Megasquirt platform, along with going into some of the knock safety stuff. Specifically, like if you're boosted, this is something that you're really going to be interested in. Honestly, I don't know if you're really going to need it because we need to talk about timing first. Just a real quick refresher of how timing works. Essentially, we're picking a degree before top dead center whenever we advance it, and that's whenever we're starting the ignition process, lighting off the spark to start the burn. Ideally, though, we want to get a couple degrees past top dead center and get that full light off, that combustion that drives the piston down, and that's what creates all the power. You hear a lot of people say, oh, I'm adding more timing to get more power. That's not really how it works. There is a set amount of timing for where you're at in the power band, RPM range, and how much air that you're cramming into this stuff that's going to hit that peak timing where you generate the most amount of power. Any timing after that, or advanced more than that, I should say, is you're going to hit a point where you're lighting the mixture off too early, and it's actually going to try and combust while the piston's going up, and it's going to fight the piston, and you're going to get knock. That's what we call knock, or pre-detonation. Now, there's another symptom that we can run into that's called pre-ignition. That's different. That's whenever everything's so hot that it just ignites before the spark has a chance to go off. And a lot of times, you need a better intercooler. You're going to need colder spark plugs to keep that from happening, because those spark plugs retain a certain amount of heat as part of this whole balancing act of getting that air to fuel lit off at the exact right time. Now, why do we see lower numbers up top in different situations, such as boosted applications? Well, as we compress more air into the cylinder chamber and things heat up because of it, as you know, compressing air makes it hot, all of that plays into how long it takes the burn to happen. So normally aspirated in its 8.5 to 1 compression ratio, you might be able to run 35 degrees of time in advance at wide open throttle, because it takes that long to start the burn before it hits maximum efficiency, maximum power. Whereas whenever we cram 25 PSI of boost into the thing and we're running 10 to 1 compression ratio or something crazy like that, it may just be about to ignite off at any second, and so we may only need to advance the timing 6 or 7 degrees at that point in time to get that explosion to happen at that ideal time after top dead center. So as you can see, there's a lot of different things that come into the dynamics of determining our timing, and you also have to keep in mind things like RPM, because the faster the motor's spinning, the less amount of time that we have to get that full flame front to expand out and explode, and so we run less timing up top as we compared to down low in the lower RPM ranges, where the motor's not moving as fast and it takes a little bit longer for that piston to come up, hit top dead center, and start to come back down. So I have got our table opened up over here. We're going to take a look at kind of the initial timing settings that I have set up on our Megasquirt for our Typhoon. You can see the big thing over here is our ignition load KPA. This is just going to be based on cylinder pressure, and then RPM. That's the easiest ones for timing. This kind of gives us a cylinder load idea. Whereas we go up in this situation, we're pretty low at idle because we want to maintain a good idle. We're around 15, then we get through the torque area, 1500 to 3,500, 3,000, around there, we're going to see our max amount of timing. In this case, we'll probably see close to 30 degrees of timing, but pay attention to this row right here. This is our boost threshold row. Everything above this, we're getting into boost, and so our timing from this point on is always going to slope down the higher it goes. And in this case, at basically no boost, up to say 206, which is going to be around 20 psi, 21, 22 even, because we're looking at, yeah, probably about 21, I'd say, at 206. We're looking at a sweep of 32 down to 12.8. And that's because of all the stuff that I talked about, where we're compressing everything, making it hot and causing it to burn faster, so we're running less advanced at that point in time. You'll see that we kind of peak off, and then our timing drops back down towards the end because we've hit our peak power, and you know, the dynamics of everything might fall off a little bit. We could run maximum timing out the back side past 5,500 if we needed to. This is where you need a dyno to really see where it's at. But almost all timing graphs are going to kind of follow the same curve. It's just how aggressive that they're going to be in the curve, how much timing that you're going to run. You hear guys back in the carbureted days running 35 degrees. That's because they're running 8.5, 9, 9.5 to 1 compression ratio. LS guys, we may get into the mid 20s, high 20s. That's because we're at 11.5, even, you know, 11, 11.5 to 1 compression ratio. All of those factors play into how much timing to advance. Last but not least, on our timing chart here, you can see off throttle, high RPMs, our timing really advances out, and that's because we're trying to burn off any auxiliary fuel, or not auxiliary, I should say, excess fuel that gets into the cylinder. We want to burn that stuff off. This is also kind of what creates that engine braking feel that you're used to whenever you let off the throttle. If you don't have this stuff on, to have that advance in there, you're not going to get engine braking. And in fact, if you have something like a pops and bangs tune where this is all really retarded down to try and ignite the fuel off in the exhaust, you're actually going to create power on decel. You know, all that makes sense, as we are actually trying to burn that remaining fuel before we get to top dead center to slow the piston down, slow the engine down, and create an engine brake kind of situation. So now that we've talked about timing on this particular platform, you know, we are going to be using our factory knock sensor, and we're going to go into our knock sensor setting, take a look at it. The big things to take away from this is we've got a couple different knock control modes: disabled, safe mode, and aggressive mode. So we're going to be running this in safe mode for now. And essentially what that means is it's going to be able to pull timing whenever it detects knock. And then it's going to stop once the knock goes away and hold there. You know, it's going to say, okay, if I had to take 4 degrees out, just stay 4 degrees below. For that cell, it is cell based. It's going to not necessarily pull 4 out of the entire table. It's adaptive and things like that. Whereas aggressive mode is going to pull timing out till the knock goes away, and then it's going to slowly start putting the timing back in till it sees knock. Then it'll just kind of come back out and back in, and it's always going to be on that threshold of possibly where knock is going to be. Being that we're boosted, we don't want that. If this was an NA setup, I would be running the aggressive mode if I was running timing at all. We won't really touch on some of these other settings down in here: the detection, the retarding, the recovering. These are all going to be things like maximum retard is 15 degrees that it can pull out of the table. Our recovery rate is going to be how much timing it can put back in before it gets to that set point or tries to get back towards our base table. Even in aggressive mode, it's not going to add more timing than what is in your base timing table, so you don't need to worry about that. But the big other thing that we want to look at on here is our knock input threshold. You can see I've got this pretty high because this knock sensor is very sensitive, picks up a lot of noise. And so I've got this at 70, and this is trial by error. I started around 25, noticed that the thing was always into knock and pulling timing and getting us down to like a base. I have a base timing of around 10 degrees on this thing, wide open throttle. It was pulling us down into that, and I took it up to 50, I took it up to 70. 70 seems to be a good threshold, but we're gonna do a pull, and I'll show you kind of what we look at whenever we're doing that, because there's another setting here whenever we're using the internal knock sensor input like this, where we have our knock sensor parameters. And if we open that up, we've got a band pass frequency. All there's frequencies based on the bore size of your piston. And so determining what that is, like go to Formula Labs. They make is formula like pH. They make a third part or an aftermarket knock sensor that kind of has the ability to listen in with headphones and stuff like that. But they have a calculator. They have a knock sensor calculator that will tell you based on your bore size exactly what it should be. And ours is around 5.86. 5.7 around there, I want to say. I ran it to 5.9 and that seemed to be where it was most happy. You can see over in the left hand corner here, this is our knock input. The other one was gain. I had to play with the gain a lot to get this thing dialed way down, and this is just like tuning it on you know, HP tuners or something like that. If the gain is too high, we pick up too much background noise and we get too much knock. So this thing started at 1, and I'm going to turn this thing up to 1 and burn this in real quick so you can see what it does. Boom, look at that number. We are now at, like, it just pulled all of our timing. It just pulled all of our timing. If you look right there, we're at 10 degrees timing. At idle, it freaked out and pulled 10 degrees of timing out of it because it was showing so much knock. And so I played with this and got this dropped down, and I ended up around 0.125 gain. Okay, now as you can see, we're back up and reading. Our timing's right around 14 degrees. We're below our knock threshold input, so it's not pulling that initial timing back out again. So we're good to go there. Now there's some other stuff like the knock window settings, which is going to determine like when to start the knock window and how long it is. Right now I've got it set to after top dead center, because whenever you're determining knock or reading knock, it's generally going to be a couple degrees after top dead center that you actually hear the rattle. You can fine tune this, and then we've got about 20 degrees from top dead center and 20 degrees. That's the window in which it can say this is knock. Anything outside of that window, it's going to filter it out and say that it's not knock. So we're only checking knock on each individual spark fire. And in fact, it might be a good idea to just drop this down to about -5. Well, actually, let me just do the table view here. Where's the table view? There's the table view. Go -5. No, I wanted to decrease the cells by 5. Do as I say. Oh, decrease cells by 10. There we go. -5. So now we're at -5 or 5 degrees before top dead center, and we've got 20 degrees of window in there that we're going to say is our window to determine our knock. So now that we've got that done, we're going to come over here. I've created a new graph. I'm going to edit this in designer mode and delete all this stuff out of here because I want a big tasty knock graph that I can see our knock reading that shows me. And so I'm going to do designer. Let's do a new gauge. And I'm just going to add a digital gauge in here. I'm going to make this one huge. Just a big number that we can look at. And so we will be, let's find our knock calculation. This could be on our sensor inputs, knock input. Looks like that one. There we go. And then on top of it, I can come in here and where's my properties at? Designer mode. It can be a little bit a pain in the butt to go through. Here we go, properties dialog. All the stuff that you can do on the gauge layouts, and I'll do a video later on that. And so thresholds, knock input, percentage, current value 13, historical peak 14. Peaks important, we're 0 to 100, low critical. So we're going to set our high warning to 70 because that's our threshold that we set it at, and then our high critical to 75. And we know if we break into 70, we're pulling timing out of this. So now we can go ahead and exit designer mode. Bingo. Now we got a big number that we can look at as we drive down the road. And Don't forget to start a data log. Let's go over to graphing and logging. Start data logging. Okay, we're data logging. We'll come back over to the gauge cluster, see our knock input. Let's go throw some boost at this thing and see what it does, and then verify our data log. Woo! Wide open throttle. So we'll go back over to our graphing and logging. Let's stop our data log. And we could open it up in Megalog Viewer if we wanted to. In this case though, I'm just going to add it underneath here. Let's go to our, leave that alone. Let's go to knock, add it to our chart, knock in. Okay, it's this green line down here at the bottom. We can kind of scroll through here and see. And we got into, you know, some from the looks of it, and I thought I heard a little bit down there. And that is, you can see our max right here for that was 75.21, so we barely tipped into what we would consider knock. But you can see here as we're getting under boost on these pulls, our noise goes up. So, good chance we're pretty good right there, and then we see a spike up. You know, it goes up as the RPMs go up. We are getting transient noise in there, and it's hard to tell without putting an aftermarket knock monitor on here to listen, or using some det cans to tell if we're getting into real knock. I didn't hear it so much on the first one, first pull. On the second pull, I thought I heard just a little bit. And if we go over to the peak on the first pull here, we're looking at, work with me, 65.6. So that technically fell underneath our threshold. If we were to look at timing, our timing should have been good through there. Base spark advance. Okay. So our base spark advance is in yellow. And you can see on here, our base spark advance dropped down to about 11. On that pull, 13. Now we go over to the second pull where we heard what I thought was knock. Base timing drops down to 11 and rides 11 a lot more. And we saw 75.2 as the peak knock in there. But you'll see that it was really down here in where we're at. Timing ramped down to 11 based on our timing graph. Let's go to our ignition table over here and take a look at it. Where we're at, we're commanding 11 in that area anyways. You can see over there kind of where we're at. So we got down to 11 because we got up to 250. We're running too much boost. It's a problem. We're over boosting a little bit, getting high in the graph. We saw a little bit of spike. It came right back out. And in fact, that spike may have not been enough to even keep us in knock reduction. Nothing serious there, but that's really where it tips over. Now, my guess is, looking at this, everything's good up until that point. Our EGO correction is all right. Let's look. Our lambda error up here is white. Our lambda error is not bad. Not bad, even though we saw a spike in it. Still not bad. Okay. So, thought it was real knock. May have not been real knock, but I know that that's kind of the threshold of where I want to be on my timing at 250 kPa. And in fact, if I wanted to, I could probably come in here and grab this top row and take a degree out of it. Then maybe come down a couple rows like so and interpolate those out. Lure them just a smidge. We can burn that in because it's not going to be burned in. Go back over to my gauge cluster. Should still need burned. Yep. Let's burn that in. There we go. Now we should be able to go ahead and do another pull. Let's do the same thing. Let's start a data log, and we'll do a couple pulls on this one and see what it looks like with the timing reduced up top. We'll go back over to our gauge cluster. You guys can watch our knock percentages for me. Let me know down in the comments while I'm driving if I hit knock. If only it worked that well. That's what I need. I need a way that I can live stream this stuff and you guys can hit a button that rings a light for me. It says, hey, we're seeing this much knock. We're seeing this much knock. Woo! Whoa! We just blew a coupling off. Okay. Sounded like we had a blow-off valve for a second. Yeah, we just blew a coupling. Okay. We just blew our coupling off, made a sweet blow-off valve noise. We need to get a blow-off valve on this thing anyways one of these days. Just because I don't understand why they didn't run one in the first place. We can go back in our log here and take a look at when it happened. Okay. No, cancel. Where are we up to? 200 kPa does nothing. Ka-choo! But look at this. Even up to 200 here, as our boost PSI hits 15 pounds, look at our spark advance, our knock. On that pull, we didn't get into the higher RPMs per se, but if you look at where we're at compared to where we were getting into knock last time on the ignition graph over here, all of this is way more tamed down. We're seeing a max of 43 on there where we hit 75 just by having one more degree of timing in there. And that one more degree of timing is probably what was causing it to go into that point where we were just lighting the mixture off a little bit too early. So that kind of wraps up the initial timing setup on our Megasquirt and how to use our knock sensors. Hopefully this makes sense to you guys. I know you might want some clarifications on some of this. It's a lot of information to digest whenever we get into these standalones. But more so than anything, I just kind of wanted to show you how we went through the process of setting up that knock sensor, going out, doing a pull, and seeing where it spiked up from 40 to 75. And then using that point on our data log here to go over to our ignition table, pull a degree out of the wide open throttle area and kind of smooth it out a little bit. And then we went out and did a pull until we blew the boost coupling off there. The knock sensor numbers looked a ton better. I'm going to keep on tweaking on it with the way that it is right now, but I think we found our peak timing for the amount of boost that we're running. Doesn't mean that we won't be able to pick up some more timing in this area, down in this kind of area, to add some more oomph and torque and get boost building faster, things like that. Even down in off of idle, we could get some more timing in there. So, but for our wide open throttle stuff, I'm feeling good that I'm not going to blow the thing up from pre-detonation, so I'm going to keep on tuning. You guys are going to stick around because we're going to circle around and start talking about boost tuning. That's the next big step. And you guys know the drill. Thanks for stopping by the garage. Remember, ABT, always be tuning.